Praise the Lord, saints and friends. This is Elder Adrian Heyman, and again, talking about different things that are happening, different issues that are taking place, and how we as saints of God should be looking towards it. Of course, I'm not an end-all, be-all. You can take it and agree, disagree. That's okay. Some of you may have seen, a friend of mine, and I call him a friend and a brother because he really is. I've known him for quite some time. I'm not going to name his name because I don't want anyone veering off on him. Just because essentially it's friendly going back and forth. But I do want to clarify a few things regarding my post yesterday regarding this El Salvadorian immigrant who ended up being deported and placed in a maximum security prison in El Salvador. It's not that I'm trying to advocate for everyone to stay here if they are here illegally, and if there is cause for them to be taken back or whatever. There has to be some idea of law of the land, although it should be done, to me, discreetly. It should be done according to Christian principles, although I know this country is not necessarily always on Christian principles. It should be done fairly. It should be done, again, with basic human rights to be given. The key here is the idea of what is known as due process. And due process, to me, is just the ensuring that someone is able to explain, without them lying, of course. If they found that they lied, then that's all null and void. But if there is some way for a person to prove their innocence, then they should have the time and the space to do so. This is what our country has boasted, actually, for our idea of a person's innocent until proven guilty, the right to the right to proper representation, and all the various things that happen before a person is actually called guilty. And even when a person is guilty, they have, in certain instances, they can actually appeal the judgment against them, and then, of course, they're able to then of course, there's also ideas there. In this situation that we're dealing with, the El Salvadorian immigrant, Mr. Garcia, the key is really taking someone, whisking them off the street, maybe put them in front of a judge that essentially says, yes, you've been, without really any explanation from the person or the person's family, and then take it immediately to another country's prison. Now, the fact that the government has said that it was an administrative error and then says, well, we can't take them out anyway, is disingenuous to me. And I know that essentially a government cannot trudge on another government's territory. Although we do it all the time. We do it all the time, but it's not really what we're supposed to do. But if we're the ones who put that person in that position, then we should not be jumping through mental and verbal gymnastics in terms of twisting words and doing things. Very simply, if the person was in El Salvador, the prison, by mistake, then let's get the person out. No, I know the U.S. can't do it themselves. Got it. Understand it. But the El Salvadorian, it seems to me, is very disingenuous. And maybe it's because I just don't know the policy of El Salvador. Maybe that's the case. But if you're able to put a person in that prison, because you're president now, you're president of this country, and you have authorized the building of these prisons, if you can put this person in prison, then you should have the authority to take this person out of prison, not smuggle them to the United States. That's not what's being asked for. There should be some type, because it involves two governments. The two governments should work together. Take the person out of the prison, keep them in El Salvador until an envoy from the U.S. can come and pick them up from an agreed place. In other words, no smuggling, no centrifuge, no secrecy. Everything's done above board. But to say that you can't take someone out of a prison that you built and you commissioned and you put people in there, you tell me if that sounds disingenuous or not. Again, maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe I just don't know how the government of El Salvador is. But we're talking about, to me, Christian values. If you made a mistake, rectify the mistake. And we're supposed to be a Christian nation. We're supposed to be one that, the one thing that we appeal to is that one nation under God, although we know that we're not one nation under God, because God is not even in this. But that was supposed to be the emphasis, one nation under God. Then how do we get away with, if this was assumed to be a mistake, that, oh well, it's out of our jurisdiction, if the mistake is there, so you're going to keep a person there forever till that person dies, either of old age or of someone else killing him inside that prison. It's not my fault. He's in another jurisdiction. But you had a hand in putting them in that jurisdiction. It was your actions that placed him in that prison. So there is some responsibility that you hold for that. And one other thing that seems to be a little off, and maybe I said this yesterday, I don't know. But, no, I did say this yesterday. And again, it speaks to, but I'm going to say it one more time. If we get upset and we accuse people from other countries to letting out their people from jails and putting them in the United States in some way, because obviously they have been told, go to the U.S., go to the U.S. This is what the story is. And so all these criminals are all over the United States. And it was expanded. I wanted to make sure that it was caught this. It didn't just say nations from all over the world. It was expressly said the Republic of the Congo. I want you to think about that. Really think about that. Most of the emphasis that was put by the president of these people being released into our country, most of it was on the Republic of the Congo. Now, there's two nations in Africa called the Congo. One's Democratic Republic of the Congo, another one, whatever it is. But the idea here is this. If we are rallying ourselves up over people from other nations, which I don't believe is true, because the facts show that the prison population around the world has grown. So there's no evidence of mass releasing of prisoners to go to the United States. But let's say that that's happening. Why are we doing the same thing? Why are we doing the same thing? Releasing, because now the idea is to have American citizens who've been convicted of crimes to be put into jails in El Salvador. So, humor me for a second. If it's not okay for nations like, again, the Republic of the Congo to release their prisoners to come to the United States, if this is true, then why are we doing the same thing? Why are we even thinking about doing the same thing as taking U.S. citizens, not even talking about immigrants now, U.S. citizens, and place them in another country's prison? And let's say that person, because we have seen instances, I'm not saying it happens all the time. I think most of the time justice gets served, but there are instances. There are times. Remember, this is not a theocracy. And in a theocracy, we would ask of God, and God would tell us that person's innocent, the person's guilty. And we have to make sure, of course, that people are listening to God, because as we know through history, Israel was a theocracy before it became a monarchy. And at that particular time, people were still committing sins against God and imprisoning the wrong people. So you have to listen to, so you have to be a working theocracy where God is actively speaking to somebody. That's the only time that I can see if there's 100% assurance that those who are convicted were actually ones who are guilty. And if that is the case, whereas not everyone that is convicted is actually guilty, because things that happen, miscarriages of justice, it takes place. It does take place. Let's not fool ourselves. It takes place. I'm not even saying anything about racism. I'm just saying miscarriages of justice. It happens. Overzealous DAs, essentially people that just want to be able to pin a crime on somebody so that they can get some closure. I got it, but it's still a miscarriage of justice. Let's say that person, I'm not even talking about the death penalty. I'm about just conviction. You put them in a prison in a different country, which is supposed to be maximum security. How do you know that they can keep these people from killing each other while they're in the prisons? How do you know? We can barely do it here in the United States. How do you think it's better in another country? Or that they are well fed, that they can be fed, and they don't get sick and die. But once you bring them to another country, it's that much more difficult to change what has taken place. Again, I'm not saying this happens a lot. Most of the cases, I believe we have a pretty fair system, but sometimes people do mess up. Sometimes unintentionally, and sometimes intentionally. But if you put them in another country to serve terms, then you are making one more issue that may end up clouding our own system of justice. Just something to think about, saints. I think, my friend, you can just read what we've went back and forth on. I plan not to do it much just because essentially I just don't have the time. And I told him that. I don't have the time to go back and forth because I'm still taking care of my wife, which I'm probably going to be taking care of for a long period of time. But I stated my points. The idea is essentially due process. Give the person who's accused a chance to defend themselves. If they refuse it, up to them. Then they do whatever the law says to do. But if there is some question, someone has said a time ago that you would rather let 50 guilty people go free than one person who's innocent end up suffering because of injustice. Now, maybe that's stretching it a little bit, but I understand the idea. If God can give grace to us, and we were guilty, 100% guilty, we had no way of explaining how we can stand before God because we couldn't. It took the blood of Jesus. It took his atonement for us. And this is what we're celebrating today. This is supposed to be Good Friday. You'll see we celebrate at this point his death on the cross. He did it for us. We should have that same type while making sure everyone obeys the law, but make sure everyone gets as fair a shake as possible. That's only, I don't want to say just fair, that's only godly. And one thing we cannot do, one last thing before I leave. Yes, there are people that have been killed in this country by illegal immigrants. They have. Who's going to deny that? It's happened. Those that did it, to me, should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. But what you don't want to do is blame an entire cross-section of people for what the few bad ones did. Because after all is said and done, it's not all of the immigrants who are going around killing people. Because we can do that same thing here. Today, it's the immigrants. Tomorrow, it's legal black and Hispanic Americans that get blamed for it. Or the Jews get blamed for it. From such things, the Holocaust ended up taking place. With such things, Jim Crow laws grew and expanded. Because maybe one person did something they weren't supposed to do. So now everyone pays for it. Let's not go down that path, saints. Let's not go down that path. Because once we start, it's so hard to put the genie back in the bottle. It's hard. Every man should take account of their own sins. Let's practice that. If there's justice to be done, let justice be done. If there's imprisonment to be taking place, someone should go to prison for their crimes. But let's do it according to how God wants it and how the laws of this country were set up and intended. Not letting politics get into this, but justice. Whether Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, whatever. Let justice for its own sake be done. God bless you. Take care. I'm sure there's going to be some other. I'm going to try to stay out of this comment. If someone wants to comment, let them do it. No problem. but because I don't have as much time to go back and forth again. Not that I don't like doing it. I like to be able to defend myself or defend what I'm saying, but I have other priorities. But I'm going to continue doing this and just giving you a point. You can voice your opinion on it. For better or for worse, I still love you all as saints of God. Even those who are not saints, I love you too, guys, because you're human beings. And never forget that. God saved human beings. Not just because of how good we are, but precisely because we weren't that good. And God cared anyway. Take care. Love you all. In Jesus'